to that can rule with an iron fist. And so when people talk about democracy, they completely misstate the purpose of our government. Our government is intended to protect the individual and individual liberties. Do you know of any other country that has a Bill of Rights? I don't know of any other country that does. Individualism is key. The Declaration of Independence talks about unalienable rights for every single human being, natural rights. And the authority comes from God, not from government. Well, we have a serious problem in this country. The Constitution has been breached constantly. In many respects, we live in a post-constitutional America. And let me explain what I mean. At every turn in our society now, promoted by the media and academia and certainly the politicians themselves, the goal is to empower the ruling class. They'll use their mob, they'll abuse the middle class, but the goal is to empower the ruling class. And we have a ruling class that is narcissistic, that is incompetent, and in many respects, anti-American. And we've seen failure upon failure for which they take absolutely no responsibility. And as a matter of fact, when they fail, they blame you, the American people. When they fail, they blame other people, institutions, our history. They do whatever they can to deflect. Why? Because the answer to their failure is always more power for them and less freedom for you. Look at this slaughter that just took place in Texas. Gun control, red flag laws. Joe Biden gives a speech. Man's been in government his entire life. Senator, 36 years, vice president, 8 years. Now he's president of the United States. Keeps saying, we need to do this, we need to do that. For God's sakes, enough is enough. And what is the answer? To steal more and more liberty from the individual, to pretend the Bill of Rights don't exist. They're flexible, they're pliable, they're whatever the ruling class wants it to be. Last month, the issue was the First Amendment. Remember that? Oh, you know, freedom isn't really totally free, and free speech isn't absolute. The Second Amendment's not absolute, but what is absolute? The growing power of the central government and the ruling class, the incompetent, narcissistic, and in many respects, anti-American ruling class. This slaughter in Texas. When Joe Biden gave that speech, he described what took place in that classroom. It was a horror. We're learning more and more what took place in that classroom. Let me tell you what took place in that school district, in that classroom. We had a police force led by a man who was a complete incompetent and a coward. They didn't breach that school, get in there, and kill the mass murderer. That's what they're trained to do since the Parkland slaughter. That's what they're trained to do. Ramos, that's the killer's name, Ramos, he was all over social media. The community knew he was a nut job. What did they do, the authorities? Absolutely nothing. What did big tech do? Absolutely nothing. Busy chasing down conservatives or people who have different views on masks. Look at the slaughter in Buffalo. Again, a failing of the ruling class. That mass murderer, who was a white supremacist, he was all over social media. He wasn't hiding who he was or what he wanted to do. He wasn't caught. And the hospital lets him out in 36 hours. They have some of the strictest gun control laws in New York and a red flag law in New York. The idea that more laws would have stopped him. If we don't have a ruling class, whether they're running our hospitals or whether they're running our internet services and our social platforms, or whether they're running a police department, or whether they're running a country that is not competent, that is not focused, that is not looking for ways to grab more power rather than to effectively exercise and manage the power that they have, well, more laws are not going to matter in terms of capturing the bad guys. The same ruling elite that praised the 2020 riots, the same ruling elite that was painting Black Lives Matter signs in the streets, a Marxist organization, a corrupt organization, a racist, anti-Semitic organization, the same ruling elite that was defunding police departments, slashing their budgets, trashing their own cops, lying about their racism and so forth. That ruling elite, we're going to rely on them to have more power? Ladies and gentlemen, there's not a damn law they can pass in this country that's going to stop these shooters when we have people who are responsible for enforcing these laws who don't do it. One statistic we never see: how frequently has the Biden administration brought cases against violators of federal gun laws? Where's that statistic? Where's that chart? We don't see it. Why not? Because the number must not be that great. And what about the statistics of the number of people who've actually used firearms legally, properly, to defend themselves and defend their fellow Americans, whether at home or in public places? Where are those statistics? We don't see them. You know, we learned in Parkland that you have to harden the facility. The armed guard there hid behind a post for 40 minutes while kids were being slaughtered inside. So people need to be trained properly. Joe Biden says, we haven't done a thing. He's a liar, and he's always a liar. They've done a thing in many states. In the state of Florida, they've completely changed their procedures. They've changed their budgeting process. They are prioritizing school safety, not by taking guns from honest citizens and law-abiding Americans as if that's going to stop people from slaughtering people. No. They've hardened their schools. They've passed a law that you have to have an armed, trained police officer in every school for every 500 students on the location. They've changed the rules with respect to doors, with respect to the entire compound of a school. Joe Biden didn't say a word about hardening facilities and armed police officers in our schools. Not one word before he flew off to Rehoboth Beach. Why? Because he said he doesn't believe in it. Tom Brokaw said, what are we going to do, turn schools into jails? Did he say that after 9/11? Do you know how many armed people there are in the federal government and airports? TSA, airport police, local police, they're all over the place. You see the Capitol building now, how secure it is? It's like a military compound. They're protecting the Supreme Court from the pro-abortion left, which they must do. You try and get into a federal facility, they're protected. A bureaucracy, they're protected. But schools are not. Schools are not. There's something terribly wrong. This ruling class, whether it is protecting society with the murder rate going through the roof or anything else, it's the worst so-called ruling class you can possibly imagine. And yet they want more power. They're the ones who've caused inflation with the mindless, historically unparalleled spending and debt and deficits and the borrowing. They created inflation. They destroyed the supply chain, not the virus, because of the union rules that are on the West Coast, because of the environmental rules that are on the West Coast. There's only one port operating 24/7. One out of 7 at Long Beach. One. Why? Because of what I just said. Gas prices. Joe Biden, first day in office, signs an executive order that chokes the energy industry. Now the price is going through the roof. We went from energy independence to energy dependence. He's really happy with himself. He cut a deal with Saudi Arabia. He's working on Venezuela now to send us all. It's like we're back in the 1970s. We've made no progress. I already talked about the war on the local police departments. The war, not on the federal, the local police departments. So they want to attack the cops, make it impossible for them to do their jobs and protect citizens while you're being disarmed. And don't be fooled. AR-15. Biden blurted it out. 9mm guns. The most popular gun in America. They're not going to stop with rifles. They never stop. Why? I wrote about it in Ameritopia. The utopians, the statists, a.k.a. the American Marxists, but let's put it this way. When the ruling class fails, it doesn't look in the mirror. It's not circumspect. It looks at you. They're not going to look at their ideology. They're not going to say our ideology doesn't work. They're going to press the gas pedal. These people aren't going to fix what they broke. And I've talked about this many, many times. And what we have now going on here is that the state is replacing the civil society. That is, the state is devouring the civil society. And we are really at a turning point now where it's greatly, greatly dangerous to our liberties and our constitutional system. Look at immigration. The borders are wide open. I mean, if people can come across the border illegally and hundreds of thousands of them undetected, well, what stops guns from coming across the border illegally? Once they put in place their rules against the average citizen in this country, what stops guns? Have we stopped fentanyl from coming across the border? Again, it is a failure, in some cases intentional, in some cases incompetent, of the ruling class. And now they're meeting in Washington. We're going to have some kind of bipartisan law. We're going to have a checklist of all the things they need to pass. As if that would have fixed what took place in Texas. A failure of the leadership of the police department, or the school district police, to act. As if that would have fixed what took place in Buffalo. They had their red flag law there. They had their gun control law there. But they didn't take care of business. They learned in Parkland. They learned in Florida. That doesn't mean they're going to have a perfect record. There'll never be a perfect record. And as for the media, if you expect to get facts and truth and useful information, thoughtful discussion from the media, you are absolutely out of your mind. They are pushing the agenda too. A free society cannot remain free for long when the media throws in with the ruling class and becomes part of the mouthpiece for the ruling class and pushes their propaganda. It's simply not possible. So the failure here is in the people who want more power. The people who want more power, time and time again. When you look deeply into these situations, it's them. It's them. They don't deserve more power. And we want to keep our liberty and our Constitution. When I come back, two great guests, Charles Payne on the economy, Richard Goldberg on what Iran's doing about the breakout with nuclear arms. I'll be right back.
There are many names for enthusiasts.
And don't forget, folks, this is exactly what I'm telling you about when they took away my YouTube site and my YouTube channel. Just because I posted 3 events that Dr. Charles Frank, spoke about, a professor who's an expert on elections and computers. And I posted those speeches by him and his video, and against their wishes, because they are anti-Trump and completely, and they lie about why they're taking me off the air. They should have no right to take me off the air. Publicly, I've asked them to show where I did wrong. Why don't they show? They can't, because they know they're wrong in doing it. But their motivation is to use the liberal cause to take away our God-given rights, the rights of freedom of speech, the rights to own your own firearm in your house if you wish to, and to protect yourself, and to protect all the citizens. So check it out. I'm still on Facebook so far, but only allowed 35 minutes of sound time with my videos. And I'm having to put them up in 35 minutes or less segments. Part 1 through Part 5 on the last one, about a golf outing for a nonprofit organization. Check out the fact that I now cannot use my YouTube site at all, even though I've spent years loading up all of my videos, and all of them are educational purposes, are speaking the truth. So I'd appreciate your help out there. Give me a call or Facebook me on John Stephenson, Stephenson, phone number 859-750-0000. Help me to fight YouTube and Google in their efforts to stifle free speech. God bless you and have a great day. My email address is small s 7500000 at gmail.com.